Welcome to Wednesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, right here live from the NFL Combine in lovely and actually balmy, surprisingly, downtown Indianapolis. My name is John Schmelk. It's all brought to you by AWS, proud sponsor of the New York Football Giants. A big-time show coming your way today. Later on, we'll hear from Daniel Jeremiah and Charles Davis from NFL Network, also Sam MONSON from Pro Football Focus. But to lead us off, one of our friends of the program, he is Jeff Risdon from Real GM. Jeff, it's good to see you, man. How are you?
It's good to be back here in person with you guys. It's been wonderful to get back and see people and see the guys at podium, see them. They're going to work out. They'll start working out tomorrow. It's just nice to be back, man. And you're right. It's very warm here. I didn't get.
No.
Normally you're walking through slush and wind. And last night was pleasant, and today it's going up to like 65.
It's amazing. Like
I love
usually
I love
those
it.
like late night walks from
Yeah.
an eating establishment can be pretty chilly outside
Yeah.
when you can't get into those walkways at night. So
Yep.
certainly, yes, it's been nice. So it is great to see you in person, Jeff. Good to have
Yeah.
everybody back in the business. We just had our first set of prospects go this morning, the quarterbacks and wide receivers and tight ends, which is always fun to see. Anything you took away from the morning session, listening and really getting your eyes close up on these prospects?
You know, one of the things that I like to do is I like to check out the players and how they look physically compared to one another. Like if they're one guy's coming off of a podium and another one's coming on.
Yeah.
And you sort of get to compare their body types and things like that. And it's always interesting to see that. You see a guy like Treylon Burks, who talked about needing to wear a 4X glove, custom-made gloves for his hands.
He's thick too, by the way.
Yes, yeah. He can kill a boar with his bare hands, which is
Dude, how about that story?
that.
Apparently, he goes hunting, and they bring dogs out who track down boars, and they sneak up behind them and kill
Yeah.
them with knives.
Yeah, and it's very Arkansas thing.
We don't do that in New York.
No,
really. No.
we don't. I live in Michigan. We don't really do that there either. But if he ever goes to the Lions, I'll tell you what. Frank Ragnow is the Pro Bowl center for the Lions. He's from Minnesota. Went to college at Arkansas and he has his own hunting channel actually on
Really?
YouTube,
All right.
which is fun. So maybe you make a connection there. But yeah, he's a very well built guy. George Pickens was a very well built guy.
Yeah, he was.
Very impressive. He says he's going to run in the 4.4s. We'll see how that goes. I think they run Friday or Thursday. But yeah, it's
Yes, I believe they're Friday.
yeah. But it was interesting.
No, you're right. It is Thursday. Wide receivers,
Yeah.
quarterbacks are Thursday.
Yeah.
You're right.
Enjoyed very much sitting in front of Malik Willis. There's a guy who's very comfortable being Malik Willis, and I think that's you get he's not.
Not in a bad way, by the way.
No, not at all.
Really good kid.
Yeah. Very charismatic, very at peace with what's going on with him. Very philosophical. Talked about that he needs to get better with his accuracy and his fundamentals. He's talking about what he's doing on it, which is good because if you've seen him throw a football, look, he's got a great arm. It's spray though. You just don't know where it's going. And his footwork, we saw it up close and personal at the Senior Bowl. His footwork changes from rep to rep. They're working on getting it all together. So he's a very interesting project. But I'll tell you what, that guy, he's really easy to like, and he's going to be really easy for fans to like wherever he winds up.
I've used your quote, by the way, about Willis on a couple of shows. At the Senior Bowl, he had most of the best reps of all the quarterbacks.
Absolutely,
but
he
he
did.
also had some of the worst reps of all the quarterbacks. So.
And that's what you get. You
Yeah.
look at his game tape. You watch their game against Army or Louisiana Monroe last year at Liberty, and it's like, oh, how's that guy even in consideration? But then you see what he can do when he's around better players at the Senior Bowl, and when he's given chances from his offensive line, which was just wretched. It's like, wow, there's something there that it's hard to predict where he's going to go. I don't think he's going to be around after about the first 12 or 13 picks.
Right.
But for a quarterback needy team, if you're going for upside more than immediate need, that's your guy this year.
Who should Giant fans take out of their heads and remove from their hopes and dreams for who could be on the board and available at number 5? Who should they start thinking like, this probably ain't going to happen?
I'm going to tell you there are 3 players that I don't think will have any chance of being
I
there.
think I know the guys you're going to pick, and Giant fans aren't going to be happy about it.
Aiden Hutchinson is an easy one. I don't think he's getting past 2 in Detroit. That's a very easy match to make.
Dan Campbell type of guy. man.
100%.
Yeah.
And he's from Detroit, so it's a very easy sell, and they happen to need it too. That's probably their biggest position of need. Kyle Hamilton isn't going to be there at safety.
Okay, so maybe it's not the 3 guys. that I thought.
Every single NFL person that I've talked to in the last couple of weeks, he is the best player in the draft, regardless of position.
Highest grade.
Yes, and it's going to be tough to see him get. He could go 1. I wouldn't put any money on that, but with how good he is and how safe he appears to be as an elite prospect. Like it's been a long time since the safety went number 2 overall, but he compares very favorably to the guy that did. Eric Turner, rest in peace, was a Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber player, went to the Browns in 1991. Before his knee injury, led the league in both tackles and interceptions in the same season. Kyle Hamilton has that kind of potential. So it's tough to see him get there. And then Evan Neal is just a mammoth freak. We haven't even seen him in person yet, but my goodness, it's tough to see a guy that big with that repertoire fall much far. I don't know if he or Ekwonu from North Carolina State are going to go 1, but I don't see him getting a 5. I really don't.
Do you think there's a shot at Ekwonu though?
Yeah,
outside shot.
It could be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody's gonna take a. I hate to say it. Somebody's gonna take a quarterback up that high.
You think in the top 4?
I think it's going to be one of those where somebody gets nervous and wants to jump up, whether it's Philadelphia or
you want to move ahead of Carolina.
Exactly, because Carolina has pretty much telegraphed it. It could be Pittsburgh moving up. It could be Washington moving up. There's a lot of uncertainty with it, but I could see Ekwonu getting there. I could see Kayvon Thibodeau is an interesting one.
What do you hear on him? And literally, I'm going to ask this same generic question to everybody. What's the deal with Kayvon Thibodeau?
The NFL isn't as excited about him as we thought they'd be. And it's not necessarily that he doesn't love football or anything like that, because we've gone through this with Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett loves dinosaurs. No big whoop. He can still play football. Like it's not a thing. But there's questions that have come up about Thibodeau's effort from play to play, his competitive intensity. One of the things that I gathered from the Senior Bowl when I was talking to somebody who knows that program well is that he's not a guy who hates to lose. And there's a difference between loving to win and hating to lose. And all the really driven guys, they're driven more by the hatred of losing, and the fear of losing. And he doesn't give off that impression to people. For whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but that's certainly what the book is on him right now.
Interesting. So that could be an option there. How big of a drop-off is it for you from Ekwonu and Neal to your next group of offensive tackles?
It's not awful, but you're going down to guys like Trevor Penning, who's a penalty machine, but a very fun one to watch.
Yes.
16 penalties at the FCS level last year, 35 over the last 3 seasons.
Plays on the edge.
Yes, he does. If you remember Garrett Bowles, who went to Denver in the first round, similar type of hyper-aggressive player.
Taylor Lewan, too, like that type of style
exactly.
also, right?
Taylor Lewan's actually a really good comparison for him. He's not that physically polished yet, but you can see some things with him with that. Bernard Reimann, who I've seen, Austrian, played at Central Michigan.
You consider those guys mid-first, though, right?
Or late first with Reimann, and even maybe he could fall to the top of the second. And if you're not going offensive tackle for the Giants at 5, you can get him later with your second-round pick.
How about Charles Cross?
He's good, and his
pass protection's phenomenal.
I would say he is probably better in pass protection than Evan Neal is. Evan Neal has the whole Alabama thing where they want you to just run into them and absorb you, because that'll take enough time to get the ball out. They know that their teammates are skilled. It doesn't necessarily translate as well to the NFL. You see it with guys like Cam Robinson and guys like Jedrick Wills, where they need a lot of technical reformation as a first-round pick. You don't really expect that when you're getting a guy. So Cross is more NFL ready than that right now. So I wouldn't have any qualms at all about picking him in the top 5.
You wouldn't? Charles Cross, you'd
be
good with?
Oh, he'd be good. Yeah.
All right, excellent. Yeah, because I think Cross is the best pass protector in the whole draft.
I would agree with that. Yeah. He's and his technique does it, his balance, his hip and shoulder and hand alignment. You can tell he's been very well coached and understands what he's doing.
All right, run through these top corners for me. The Giants might have to make some tough decisions here. They might have to make there's rumors they might make some type of move on James Bradbury, which means they could have a hole there with Mink Martindale as their defensive coordinator. Jeff, as you know, you better have corners that can cover.
Absolutely.
Or balls will be flying over people's heads.
You saw what happened in Baltimore last year when they didn't.
Against Cincinnati specifically, when Joe Burrow went for 506 touchdowns, correct?
Yeah.
So if they're in the cornerback business, who are the guys that you're looking at 5 and 7?
I really like Sauce Gardner. 5's a little high for him based on on what he's done. I think 5 actually really 7 is probably too high for any of these guys. But it's not like a terrible reach.
It's just one of those years where
it's a very strange board because the top positions, again, your best player in the draft is a safety. There's a lot of offensive linemen that don't really differentiate well from one from another in a cluster. Cornerback is sort of like that. Wide receiver, there's wide receivers everywhere, but they're all different flavors. You can get a guy at 5, or you can get a guy at 55, and who knows how much difference there is in them. So yeah,
right.
it's a weird year to do that. Sauce Gardner for me is the best cover corner in this draft. He has attitude. He can play off ball. He can play zone. He can do whatever you want him to do. The way that defenses avoided him at Cincinnati, when they have other good corners on that team, Kobe Bryant is a
good player.
Third round pick probably, and a good one, and I like him a lot. The fact that they chose to throw at that guy who's dangerous a lot, that speaks to the respect that they had for Sauce Gardner. So he is the top of the echelon. One of the things that I'm hoping comes away from here is that we get more clarity on Stingley, who has his
good luck.
Exactly, clear as mud right now.
Is he freshman Stingley or is he sophomore
right.
junior Stingley?
And to be honest, the freshman Stingley, they're like that guy can go number 1 overall. The guy who played Central Michigan and UCLA last year, you can't draft that guy. Like, he just did not care about the outcome of that game, and it was embarrassing. And I've talked to other people that have come to the same conclusion on that. Now, he also has a Lisfranc injury.
Which is a serious injury.
Foot injuries are really bad for cornerbacks because you have to have that springiness and that explosion, and you do not get that back from Lisfranc. It never comes fully back. So he's a guy that a lot of mock drafts had him go to the Jets at 4 early on. You're going to start seeing him into the teens and possibly even in the 20s now after
really?
just the medicals from it. It doesn't mean that he couldn't go in the I wouldn't touch him in the top 10 though. With between the injuries, and you've got to figure out, like, okay, give me the guy in 2019, please. Like, yes, any team can use that guy. But since then, he just hasn't been the same. And keep in mind that was just a wonderful LSU team. All of the teammates that he played with on that are in the NFL now.
Right.
And he hasn't had that support around him lately, and his play fell off. That's something to consider.
Interesting. All right, the Giants do have a pick at the top of the second round. You mentioned that already.
Yep.
They also have 2 selections around number 3, Jeff, and they have multiple picks on day 3 as well. Where are some of the spots where you think you can get some value in what's a very deep class on day 2 and early on day 3?
Yeah, I like the safeties. A guy like Jalen Petre out of Baylor is a good one.
He can cover too, man.
Yes, he can play slot corner for you. He does that hybrid role. He played actually more reps at slot corner than he did at safety. Showed in Mobile that he's a ball hawk too, and can blitz a little bit. So there's a lot to like with him. A guy like Lewis Seen from Georgia. A guy that Reed Blankenship from Middle Tennessee State, if you go a little bit deeper, is a guy, I think he's an NFL starter at safety. There's a really good group of safeties there. Corners, you can find guys. There's a whole mess of guys. Tight end, incredible value. Day 2, early day 3 at the tight end position. You're probably not going to see one in the top 50.
I feel like 4th round's a good sweet spot for that, right?
Third, 4th round, you can get a really good player. And there's, I said it the other day, I don't have one in my current top 50, but between 51 and 103, I have 8. That's how clustered the tight ends are.
Wow.
So again, you're looking more at what do you want? What does your coaching staff want? What role do they want? Do they want an inline guy? Do they want a guy that flexes out?
How about offensive line? Because if Giant fans don't see one at 5 or 7, after they sober up, and they're looking at day 2 and day 3, can you find some good offensive linemen?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
play right away?
Yeah, specifically inside guys. Guys like Ed Ingram from LSU is a good one. Ryman's teammate at Central Michigan, Luke Edeke, can play right tackle. He can also play center. There's a lot of guys. Cole Strange, a guy out of UT Chattanooga, guy that I got to interview down in Mobile, played 4 years as your starting right tackle, moved to center there, and was the best center that we've seen at the Senior Bowl in a while. So, and that's a guy that's 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th round. You can find some value down there. Guys that can come in, look, they're not going to be stars, but they're going to be functional starters that are better than what you've got, specifically in New York. Yeah, they are.
And for tackle, if you're going to do it, you better do it at the top of the second, right?
Yeah, you need to go early. If one of your first 3 picks isn't that, I'm gonna pour one out for you all too.
Jeff, good stuff, my friend. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
That's Jeff Risdon from Real GM. We'll be right back with Daniel Jeremiah from NFL Network right after this.
And the crowd into it from an amped-up MetLife Stadium. Jones keeps it for the touchdown! Giants fans, secure your seat today for only $100. Limited seats available. Call 1-888-NYG-1925.
This is a program that's been in existence for a number of years. It's really exciting to see what these kids have overcome and how they inspire the people around them. On behalf of Hospital for Special Surgery, USA Football, and the New York Football Giants,
I'm here to present you the Heart of the Giant Award. Congrats, man.
We're back here at the Combine in Indianapolis. My name is John Schmelk on Big Blue Kickoff Live, all brought to you by AWS, proud sponsor of the New York Football Giants. You know this guy, he's Daniel Jeremiah. He's the guy that uses the gears behind his head on NFL Network. By the way, that is what
I know
my
nothing
wife,
about cars, by the way.
By the way, that is what my wife says. She goes, "It's the gears guy." and I'm sure you get that a lot, by the way. All right, first of all, Move the Sticks podcast. He's the host. You can find him on Twitter at Move the Sticks, and he'll be one of the anchors and big-time analyst on NFL Network's coverage of the draft Thursday through Sunday, starting at 4 p.m. every day. First of all, it's great to be here in person again, man. It's so much better than last year, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's just nice to have the Combine back and then to see all the friendly faces. I was joking when I was walking in here. I said it's same hallways, see the same people, go to the same restaurants, and it feels just like a comfortable sweater that you just put back on.
And this could be the last year in a while, too,
Yeah.
so let's make the most of that for sure. All right, DJ, let's get through it. Let's keep the simple stuff first here for the Giants at 5-7. Yeah. Who are the run-to-the-podium guys for you? If they're there, you don't ask no questions, you put in the card and move on.
Well, I would say Hutchinson and Aquanu would be the two that I would just run the card in.
Not Neal.
Neal wouldn't be for me. He's my 5th overall player, so I wouldn't hate that pick at all.
Of course.
But to me, I just think those top two guys are. I just think they're no-brainers. I think you just plug and play them, and off you go.
Now, the bad news, I imagine you probably feel like neither of those guys will probably be there.
I don't think they'll be there. We'll see. It's a long time between now and then, and teams have free agency to address other needs and see what happens. But, I just think they're high floor and high ceiling guys, which are hard to find.
Now, I'm surprised you didn't mention Kyle Hamilton there, because I know a lot of people, he's probably maybe the highest graded player in this draft class, right? If you're the Giants, how much of a consideration should Hamilton be, especially considering they have Xavier McKinney in place, who proved to be a pretty good single high safety last year, and, Wing Martindale, he's not playing two safeties deep. So how do you see Hamilton as a potential fit?
Well, I think he fits with anybody because he's a great player.
He can do a lot of different things.
But to me, when I kind of look at, that team, that fit, I don't love it from that standpoint. Look, if you play him, he's gonna chance to be a perennial Pro Bowl player. But I think where the roster is right now and kind of some of the things they're looking at, I could make, even though I think he's my 3rd rated player in the entire draft, I could make an argument. Personally make an argument. The Giants fans don't want to hear it. But I could make an argument for me as a wide, I like Garrett Wilson, I would say, come in and have an immediate impact there, and I can go get, someone else a little bit later on down the line to the other position.
All right, let's dig into the O-line a little bit more. Let's say Neal and Aquanu are gone.
Yeah.
Because that's easy. Who's your next guy? I know in your mock you had Trevor Penning there. A lot of people have Charles Cross there. And can you pull the trigger on one of those two guys that early, or is it too big of a drop-off for you from Neal and Aquanu to those two?
Yeah, for me it's a drop-off, pretty significant. And so that's why it's tough when you talk about ranking players versus mock drafts, because it's, a lot of people say, we need an offensive lineman, we're taking an offensive lineman. You're not taking the 20, if you think, like I do, this is the 23rd best player in the draft, you can't take him over a guy who you think's the 3rd, 4th best player in the draft. You just can't do that. Now, you can trade out and try and position yourself to get more value for that next offensive lineman, which
good luck this year.
If you can find a partner, then you're congratulations. It's just going to be one of those years where that's difficult to do. So that, to me, is a little bit of the struggle. There are going to be great options there for edge rushers. I just like to remind people that you can build your football team outside of the first round, and the offensive line's been a great example of that. And you just watch the Super Bowl and see a team that won the Super Bowl without dedicating one of their own first-round picks to the offensive line. Free agency, you've got trades, you've got good players you can get day 2, which I love, 2nd, 3rd round type guys. You can build a very functional offensive line.
Yeah, I'm very much agree with your no tomato cans. Yeah, tomato cans, exactly. Where you just have to be okay. You have to be solid. You don't have to be great, and you can build later in the draft. So let's say the Giants don't pick an offensive lineman at 5 or 7, after Giant fans wake up from their stupors and they relax, who are some of the guys you would keep an eye on early round 2, maybe for a tackle, and then interior offensive line round 3, round 4 that you think could help the Giants right away?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bernard Raymond is someone that's interesting out of Central Michigan as a tackle. I thought he had a chance to maybe even go in like the middle of the first round. I thought his Senior Bowl was a little up and down. So I think he maybe took on a little bit of water there. I think he'll test well this week, which will help him. But he's one I could see conceivably being there at the top of the second round. To me, probably more towards the middle, the back end of the second round. A guy that's intriguing is a guy like Max Mitchell from Louisiana, who's another one was down there at the Senior Bowl. But he would be somebody that I think would be a nice fit there at that point in time. Then interior guys, you get into, what'd you say, like the third, fourth round?
Yeah, I would say the 3 and 4.
Yeah, I mean, Gadecki is Bernard Raymond's teammate there at Central Michigan. I think he probably slots in around there. I love Luke Fortner. I think he'll be gone from Kentucky. He'll probably go in the second round. Zion Johnson's a second-round guy.
Do you think Sawyer might get to the round?
Sawyer's an interesting one, but, he's got this kind of undersized tackle. He's going to kick inside the guard. He's real strong. I think fourth round is probably about where I would have him in that mix. So I'm maybe not as high on him as some others, but I think he's a solid player.
Now, the Giants do have a needed edge rusher as well. And you're not the only one. I've heard it from other people here, too, that people are all over the place on Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah.
All over the place. So some Giant fans might say, this guy was the first overall projected pick 4 months ago. You run to the podium for Kayvon Thibodeau. What are you hearing from teams about him that would make teams hesitate from selecting him even at 5 or 7?
When you talk to teams that are picking up there in the top, they're not going to give you anything on these guys from that standpoint. My stuff on Thibodeau is more so off of what I've seen, which I get excited about because of the explosiveness and the quickness, but there is a little bit of tightness there, and then there's times where he doesn't play as hard. So you've got some of that. Now, people look at all the, this is, some of these interviews he's done off the field, or is that a turnoff? Is that an issue? I don't know if that's really so much it. To me, it's more about this guy's a little bit ankle tight, and I just thought some inconsistency with his effort.
It's funny. You have Trayvon Walker slotting in for the Giants in your latest mock, and it's funny. You watch him. He almost plays an interior defensive line role for them, right? He's not lined up outside the tackle a lot, so there's going to be some projection there, right? And I think fans will get nervous. Well, you're picking 7th. You're really trying to project a guy to do something different than what he did in school for you. You know what I mean?
Well, I would just say that there's a great litmus test for this, is that you had Jermaine Johnson, who was there, his teammate at Georgia, who had 4 sacks last year in that scheme, which is a very, as you mentioned, it's a tight alignment. He's either head up or inside.
Yeah, 4-eye, right?
Yeah, he's in a 4-eye. He's inside the tackle, sometimes even reduced down even more than that. They don't ever loosen him up and free him up on the edge. But getting back to my point, Jermaine Johnson, he's at Georgia in 2020. He has 4 sacks in that scheme. He goes to Florida State. He has 12 sacks, leads the ACC in sacks, goes to the Senior Bowl. Nobody blocks him the whole week. And so I'm sitting here saying, okay, well, let's give Trayvon Walker that same luxury. He had 6 sacks in this defense. Loosen him up, cut him loose, let him go. And I think you'll see a different type of player. Those guys, ironically, are trained together.
Oh, okay.
They're both going to test off the charts, but Trayvon Walker's a better athlete. He's more fluid. He's more loose. Both those guys are going to go in the top 10. I think the Giants have to do their homework on both those kids.
And you think Sauce Gardner could be in the mix there at 5 or 7 too?
I'm a big Sauce Gardner fan. To me, finding long, loose corners, they're hard to find.
6'3", man.
And he can play the ball.
Yeah.
Much has been made about the fact he didn't give up a touchdown, but to me, it's like, it's just the he plays with a stinger. Like he's definitely got a little edge to him, which if you look at the best corners in the history, they all have a little edge to him. This guy has that.
What are the worries that teams have about Charles Cross? Because I watch probably the top 6 or 7 tackles.
Yeah.
And for me, if I'm going to bet on one guy on an island to block a defensive end, that's the guy I'm going to pick in this class.
Yeah.
And it's a passing league, right?
Yeah.
So what are teams worried about? Is it the scheme he's coming from? We saw what happened with Andre Dillard coming from that scheme.
Yeah.
What are some of the concerns there?
I think there's kind of the ghost of Andre Dillard a little bit, and maybe I'm guilty a little bit of that because I liked Andre Dillard, and
you weren't alone, by the way.
I forgave some of the play strength issues that he had, and with the same logic. It's a passing league. That's all they do there is pass set. He'll be fine. Well, his core strength was an issue. And I think with Cross, I think he's stronger than Andre Dillard. I wouldn't say that he's the exact same player. But I don't think he's real dynamic in terms of just, you don't see him displace guys. You don't see him uproot guys. There's times where he get knocked back a little bit.
He's never in a three-point stance.
Yeah. So there's, but again, he's a good player. And I think as we go through the process, I'm going to continue to do more work on him. He's one of those guys I readily admit, like, hey, okay, I'm probably lower on him than even some friends in the league. but it's a long process. We get to April, you do more work on these guys and see if you can get a comfort level. I'm looking forward to seeing what he looks like out here.
Would you feel okay with him at right tackle, or do you think he's a guy that's going to be exclusively at left? Because look, is there really a difference anymore with that, in your opinion?
I think that's.
Or is that gone?
I think that's pretty much gone. You got to be able to pass protect. If you look at all the left ends in this league and look at the way those guys rush, man, you better not sacrifice pass pro on the right side.
Max
anymore.
Crosby's on that side, Khalil Mack's on that side.
They're all
there
yeah,
now.
it's kind of where we are as a league right now. If you can't pass protect, I don't care where you're right tackle, left tackle, you're going to get exposed.
Final question. Big picture with this draft. Is this going to be a chaos draft? Like, I look back and I say, and this isn't meant to be insulting to the players, is this going to be 2013 all over again, where you have no quarterbacks in the top 10? You get the guys that get maybe moved up further than they should, get picked in the teens. And if you look at that 2013 draft, like the players picked 15 to 30, almost better than the players picked 1 to 14. Is that what this is kind of draft this is going to be?
I think it's going to be similar in that there's a little bit of chaos in your words, or just a lack of clarity. To be sitting here at the combine and not only not know who the number 1 pick is, because we've had that before, but like it could be like any of 4 or 5 guys.
Well,
no clarity.
No one players at each position too, right? Like,
there's a lot of debate and a lot of discussion, and it's I guess the word we've kind of used and we've been talking about is a flavor draft. Just what flavor are you looking for?
So you're looking for a lot of movement then? You think it's not going to be a lot of movement because boards are going to be so different team to team?
Yeah, I don't know. I think free agency has a way of letting us know what that's going to look like. If you're going to ask me right now where we stand, I would say I wouldn't expect a lot of movement. I think it's more of a stick and pick draft. I think there'd be a lot of people looking to go backwards, not a lot of people looking to go forwards. So that usually means you don't get a lot of movement. But, trying to predict this one's going to be difficult.
Absolutely. Quarterback top 10, yeah or nay?
I'll say no. I'll say no at this point in time. But again, once free agency takes place and you have some of these teams that look up and they don't have a guy, you'd be amazed that quarterback you kind of liked, you fall in love with.
Awesome. DJ, good stuff.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
it.
Great
and
to
of
see
course,
you.
you can see this guy on NFL Network Thursday through Sunday, 4 o'clock every day. Move the Sticks podcast at Move the Sticks on Twitter. We'll be back with Charles Davis, his colleague at NFL Network, right after this.
Welcome to the Eli Manning Show. We'll pop a shot.
Can't let Eli beat me.
Oh, Bill Murray, what are you doing here?
Yeah! Stomp him out!
The cast from Entourage is here. This is a real show.
You know what small people do? Win. How about that?
I'll park it for you.
Keep it close.
I got Eli down.
Omaha!
What a clever title.
This is a program that's been in existence for a number of years. That Hospital for Special Surgery, New York Football Giants, and USA Football have been so proud to support. And it's really exciting to see what these kids have overcome and how they inspire the people around them.
Just always bounce back up and keep going. It's so rewarding knowing my achievements have been recognized.
Got to take advantage of every opportunity you get. Thank you for everybody that nominated, that voted, and that helped me.
Football as a whole made me realize how short life is in total and how much you have to take advantage and how hard you have to actually work.
On behalf of Hospital for Special Surgery, USA Football, and the New York Football Giants,
I'm here to present you the Heart of the Giant Award. Congrats, man.
I have a Heart of the Giant.
All right, we're back here on Big Blue Kickoff live at the NFL Combine. It's all brought to you by AWS, proud sponsor of the New York Football Giants. We go from one member of NFL Network's coverage, Daniel Jeremiah, to the one and only Charles Davis, friend of the show. You can see Charles on NFL Network all week long, Thursday through Sunday, starting at 4 p.m. with coverage of those live events on the field. Charles, after a year of solitude for all of us, it's good to see you back in person, my friend.
It's great to see you in person as well. It's great to be back here and see everyone, and pretty cool. I get to follow DJ, huh? That's not so bad, you know? Hopefully I can hold up my end of the moves on the dance floor with my DJ spinning.
Well, we just did a lot of big picture stuff with DJ for the Giants. Let's do the same with you here. The Giants are at 5-7.
Yeah.
They really, if they want, can control how the first 7 picks go here in
really
a lot
can.
of ways. So let's start here. Who are your true blue chippers where if they're there at number 5, the Giants should just stop thinking, put in the card as fast as they possibly can?
Well, a lot of us are suspecting that at the top, if Jacksonville goes offense, they're going with that offensive lineman out of Alabama, Evan Neal.
Well, you
right?
want to protect Trevor Lawrence. Can't
Right,
blame
it's a little bit different than Cincinnati last year because we forgot that Jonah Williams was already on the roster.
Correct.
Okay, for Jacksonville, they've got to severely upgrade and make sure he stays upright. So let's say Evan Neal's not there. Okay, so the Giants, if you want to go offensive line, Ike Ekwonu, from North Carolina State,
get there?
That's going to be the question.
Right.
But you're sitting there at 5. There's a possibility of that happening. Aiden Hutchinson, doubtful he gets there.
If Dan Campbell lets that guy get by him, I will
Be
fall
stunning,
out of this chair.
absolutely stunning. But Kayvon Thibodeau could very well be there.
What are you hearing about Thibodeau?
And
Because people look kind of all over the map.
They're
on him
all
right
over the
now.
map, and we get that a lot with pass rushers. We get that a lot with guys that sometimes they're, the motor is not this, it's not that. But when you turn him on and he's at the top of his game, if someone finds and feels like they can buy into this kid, he can be breathtaking off the edge. So that's why he's still up there.
In order to catch up after the season, I watch all the good things the guys do, right? So I watch all of Thibodeau's sacks and quarterback hits, and he wins in every way you want. And I'm watching, I'm like, how is this guy not the number one kid in the draft? But then people tell me, well, if you watch full games, if you watch the full body of work, that's when
you'll
start
see those
questions.
things that kick in, and it's a common thing. If you go back with Myles Garrett at Texas A&M, there's some of that talk there. There people were saying, well, I don't know if we're gonna get. I think they're pretty happy to have Myles Garrett right now. So I'm not saying that Kayvon Thibodeau becomes him, but all I'm saying is with this time of year, you and I both know the chatter is intense, right? Teams have to do their homework, decide if they buy in or not, or if not, they get a chance to pass. But to me, the one that we're all going to talk about is, does Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame, make sense for the Giants sitting there at 5? Or are they going to try and force the issue a little bit and maybe get him at 7? Because he's the type of player that normally you say, I don't know about a safety, I don't know about this.
Well, especially
but to
since
me,
they already have Xavier McKinney on the roster, who's also very good.
Got him, but in this day and age, the way that you can utilize these guys and make them what I call mirrors, where one drops, one's back, the other drop, and they don't have to have assigned roles where one is one and one is the other.
And that's how you disguise
That's
coverages.
how you do. That's how you disguise coverages. And this kid is rangy. We'll talk about it all the way through the draft. You'll get sick of seeing it. The interception against Florida State, where he came from center field and took it, was about as good a play. I think I had Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer, I can't remember which one, in Buffalo against New England in the playoffs. They made a similar type of a play, but this kid's was just exceptional.
And he's built like Isaiah Simmons.
And he's built like Isaiah Simmons, 6'4", 215, 220. He can drop, he can cover, he can do all the things you're looking for. He might be the type of guy that's just such a great athlete you can't pass on.
How big of a drop-off is there for you, Charles, from the Equanus and the Neals to that next group, the Pennings, the Cross? Could one of those, Giant fans, they want to fix the offensive line.
You want to fix it.
Could one of those guys be in the mix at 5 and 7, or is that too much of a reach for you?
I feel like it's too much for me. I mean, Cross I would have up there a little bit higher. Penning, I like, and I really liked him at the Senior Bowl, but he's one of those kids that, he wants to be edgy all the time. Every snap, be edgy. And that's been his advantage. That's been how he's gained acclaim. The biggest thing is make sure you block the guy in front of you.
And by the way, and this is nothing against the program, but picking an offensive lineman from Northern Iowa, 7th overall, that would be big jump.
It would be a huge jump. We've seen a little bit of that. Remember, Eric Fisher ended up moving to number 1 from Central Michigan. Last year, Spencer Brown went in the third round, an extremely athletic kid. Ended up starting half the year for the Buffalo Bills and got better as the season went on. So I don't shy away from that. I think Penning has the talent, has the ability, and he could very well be a day 1 starter. But I don't know if you're taking him at 5 and 7. You might want to get him a little bit later into the first round.
What's your feel for the cornerbacks, Sauce Gardner, and then Derek Stingley, who I think a lot like Thibodeau,
he is the
people are
one.
going to be all over the map on him too, right?
If you buy into Derek Stingley, to me, he's the best corner in the draft.
Well, as a freshman, if he played like he did as a freshman the last 2 years, he might be the first overall pick.
Absolutely, and that's what we were saying. Remember, at that point, we were saying, hey, he's minimum top 5 at the end of his freshman year because he wasn't a quarterback. He's a quarterback, he was number 1 guy. So that's where we were. And depending on who you are as a scout, how much do you give credence to a freshman year? And then the last 2 years haven't been what you saw. Right. Because some guys are like, no, I'm only going off what I saw most recently. Other guys have a little bit of a mix in it. That's the way that I see things. But he would be that guy. Sauce Gardner, obviously, is the other one that some people would have ranked ahead of him. But there are plenty of corners. You got the duo out of Washington. I mean, we can go right on down the line. Not as deep as receiver, and that's why Hamilton may come off the board before any corners. But at the same time, still some guys that are going to be interesting for us to watch.
Any other names that you think Giant fans should keep an eye on at 5 or 7? Or you think the guys that would be in the mix are the guys that we've kind of hit on?
Yeah, I think we've kind of hit on them overall. I don't think there's a receiver that jumps out for them at that point. You have some guys already did that in free agency last year, and then use a first-round pick on Tony. It'll be interesting to see what happens to Saquon Barkley. I just will say that because the draft is also free agency, right? The draft is also trades. How does that fit into our thing? And I saw where your new GM said, hey, I'm open to anything right now.
You have to be.
And if Saquon Barkley could bring back a few guys, it's a possibility.
Trying to clear $40 million of cap space. That's hard work.
Listen, people who like to run the football, he has great value for them because not only can he run, he can catch out of the backfield. And if he doesn't have to be the guy, the only guy carrying it, people might like that risk a little bit more. So I've already kind of posited that he's not going to stay in the division, of course, even though Philly runs it like crazy. But he might stay in the state and go to the AFC. Wouldn't that be something? Because your GM came from Buffalo.
What do you think he learned from his time in Buffalo that he's going to bring to the Giants? Any hints you can give the Giant fans of what they could expect?
I think it's the way that they do things in Buffalo is so collaborative. Head coach, GM, ownership.
We're already seeing that here, Bob.
All in it together. Doesn't mean you always agree, but you understand how to disagree, and then still make those moves and still have that thing. So I think that's what he's going to bring first and foremost, some cohesiveness.
Final question. A mutual friend wanted me to ask you how you think in 1981 the New Paltz Huguenots would do against the Washingtonville Wizards.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a definite win for the Huguenots, and that game could have happened, but the Washingtonville Wizards didn't want to meet on a neutral site, so I don't know what to say. I mean, they thought they were dictating terms, didn't understand that at all. Ulster County over Orange County by at least 6.
Now, I'll give you one guess as to what.
Oh, I absolutely know exactly who that is. One of the all-time great Washingtonville Wizards, one Scott Pioli.
That's right.
And what a great team they had. Actually, the truth of the matter is, they would have been a favorite in the game against us, but we would have accepted the challenge.
Yeah, I believe he said they gave up 36 points all season.
All
that
season
year,
long,
which is pretty good.
Yeah, all season long. But hey, as I told him, all we had to do was score 6 because I was going to kick the extra point and beat them.
By the way, somehow, whether it was us talking about Dave Gettleman or now Scott Pioli, we always talk about upstate New York high school football.
Those are our people.
Unbelievable.
But those Wizards were awfully good. They would have been the favorite in the game, but we would have accepted the challenge.
Charles, go get him, my friend.
Appreciate
Always
it very
good to see
much.
you.
Great to see you. By the way, we beat Coach Gettleman's team twice.
Charles Davis, we'll be back with more on Big Blue Kickoff Live right after this.
And the crowd into it from an amped-up MetLife Stadium. Jones keeps it for the touchdown. Giants fans, secure your seat today for only $100. Limited seats available. Call 1-888-NYG-1925.
We're back here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by AWS, proud partner of the New York Football Giants. Also a partner, I believe, of the folks over at Pro Football Focus, right? Amazon Web Services?
Yeah, absolutely. AWS, powered by AWS. That's PFF Ultimate is.
Absolutely. And that is Sam Monson, one of the masterminds behind PFF, and it's good to have him on the show. We always have him here at the Combine. Sam, it's good to see you in person, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that was the last time we met in person, right? It was the last Combine that was actually
Sadly,
there.
it's a long time since anybody's met anyone in person in this business, which kind of sucks.
And that was that last Combine 2 years ago was basically the last thing before COVID shut everything down.
Oh,
right?
and it was I always joke that there wasn't like some type of like huge spread of the thing here in Indy that year. Is kind of a miracle, to be quite honest with you.
There may well have been, right? Because that was
right. I guess
everyone sort of knew about it back then. We were like, is it fist bumps now? And everyone was sort of talking about it. And then literally like the next week, the whole world shut down.
And there were like 2 or 3 people that were wearing masks on planes,
right.
but not everybody. Yeah.
But that was it. Like that was right at the start of this whole thing.
It really was. But it's good to see you. So let's start here with the New York Football Giants. How big of in your opinion, complete reset teardown is it versus tweak and try to be good this year and then build off of that?
Yeah, I think of it more like a change in direction, right? So it's not like they've headed down this path and it was going in the wrong direction and they needed to fix something else. They need to fix something or they were going to head to the wrong place, right? They need to go to a different destination, and rather than reverse course, go all the way back to the start, blow the whole thing up and start over, we're simply going to stop what we're doing, and we're going to figure out where we're going and head in that direction, right? And that's what they've done. So I don't think it's a complete teardown, a complete rebuild, but we are changing the GPS. We're changing the satellite navigation here, and we're heading off to where we're supposed to be from the point we've got to. And I think realistically, I look at the Giants, and they weren't in a good place last year. That offense was ugly by the end. It was getting in a really bad place. I think the pieces are there for it to be good quickly. Like when you look at the coaching staff that they brought in, when you look at the pieces that are there, and you look at this offseason ahead in terms of a team-building opportunity, free agency, trades, the draft, whatever, I think this group could get good fast. It doesn't need to be a long-term, building project, and you don't need to sort of have this awkward situation where can we build an offense for Daniel Jones, and then do we see what he has? I think this team could be good next year, at least the offense.
Well, if they can fix the offensive line a little bit, because we just had Daniel Jeremiah on and we talked about his tomato can theory on the offensive line, right? You don't need to be great. You just need to have guys that aren't terrible.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, last year they were rotating 2 or 3 guys that really teams could target and pick on over the course of the year. So now the Giants are in a situation where their only starter is going to be Andrew Thomas, that's back, who had a legitimate good second season at left tackle, good player. But they are over the cap. So maybe they can cut enough to get a mid-level interior lineman, something like that, and then you have the draft. So what do you think the best path here is to bringing that offensive line to respectability where you can actually get a feel for what Daniel Jones can do?
Well, the first point is I think Daniel Jeremiah is 100% right. I mean, we've been saying that on our podcast, the PFF podcast, for a long time, that just creep back toward average. That's the phrase we've been using, right? You don't need a group that's superstars. You just need to not have this liability on the offensive line. And if you have one liability, okay, we can work with that. But if you have more than one, you're done. You can't get that done. It's too much of a problem. So that's all they need to do. And look, the salary cap is interesting because right now, the Giants don't look like they're in a great place.
They're over,
Yeah, but it's one of those things where looking at the salary cap in an isolated snapshot now, right, like in February or early March, it's not a great way of doing it because it's before the salary cap. It's not that it's fake or that it's a myth or it's an accounting tool, right?
It's fungible. How about that?
and well, like all accounting, it's the moment in time is relevant, right? Like you can be in exactly the same financial situation now versus 2 days' time, and all you did was sort of pass a threshold of accountancy, and the things reset and the numbers change. So the Giants are one of those teams that have the capacity to free up quite a lot of space by just restructuring people and not, asking them to go take a pay cut or simply moving money from, salary to bonuses or those kinds of things.
Or even making a trade here or there. You can create some space too.
If you looked at just the number, they're over the cap, it's like, oh, we don't have any money to spend on anybody. That's not the case. I think they've got plenty of money to spend, particularly in terms of those mid-level free agents that we're talking about if we're just trying to get back to average, right? And I think it's actually a great free agency period for those types of players. There are a ton of guys that are capable, average, above average, starting caliber NFL guards, centers. And I think there's a lot of teams. Now, the problem is there's a lot of teams that need them, right? So it might not be quite the buyer's market that it looks to be. But a team like the Giants, like if they prioritize the right guys, I think they could easily go out there early in free agency and lock up a couple of players, Austin Corbett's of the world, Connor Williams from Dallas, the guy that Dallas fans hate him because he's not Tyron Smith, he's not Travis Frederick, he's not Zach Martin.
And the penalties, which are not a fan.
Sure,
yes.
and he's not a great player, but he's a decent, solid starter.
He's an NFL starting left guard.
And the thing people have to understand is that decent starting NFL offensive linemen get beat. And they get beat, a reasonable amount. The point is, they don't get beat every play, right? And if you don't get beat every play, you can work around it. And sometimes the quarterback's job is to understand that your left guard lost this snap, make something work, right? Figure it out. Dump the ball off, make the guy miss, whatever you got to do. You're going to have plays where you're going to have to make something happen because not everybody is playing behind the best offensive line in the NFL. And that's part of the job description. But getting a guy like a Connor Williams or an Austin Corbett or any of these guys, and there's a lot of them, if you nail a couple of those guys in free agency, you get to head into the draft with a little bit more freedom to target specific players and try and attack it that way. You need to overhaul the line. You need to bring in a lot of bodies, but I think you can do it.
Let's talk about Daniel Jones. There are factions in Giants fandom. Some people still think he can be good. Some people are like, dude, we've had 3 years, less than 15 touchdowns 2 straight years. Pull the rip code, parachute, get out of here. Now, my argument is, the quarterback landscape this offseason to find a new quarterback, not great, Bob.
Right.
So not sure that there's going to be a better option. But putting that aside, Give the Pro Football Focus argument as to why Giant fans should believe Daniel Jones can still be a, maybe not star, but capable NFL starter that you could win games with.
So the first one is that not last year, not 2021, but 2020, his grade was better than the numbers, right? So he had one of those, it was this weird statistical season where it's like he had the same number of touchdowns as like Dak Prescott did in like a month, and it didn't look good, right? But his grade was much better than those numbers, and I think he was a bit unfortunate in terms of being let down by supporting cast, and just statistically it didn't look quite the same. But
and frankly, the red zone offense was bad, and that's going to kill your touchdowns.
And he had taken a big leap forward. Even forget the numbers, right? He'd gotten a lot better from the first year to the second year.
Turnovers were way down,
right?
All that stuff.
And then you go into last season, started the season fantastically when everything was okay, when the line was holding up, when Andrew Thomas was playing well early in the year, when the receivers were there, and Jones was playing really well. And I actually had a bet with Steve Palazzolo, the other guy on the PFF podcast, about what his grade was going to be at the end of the year. And I was like, I think he's going to end up with I can't remember what the number was, like an 80 grade, based off where his career is going, based on what he looks like. And then the offensive line fell apart, all the receivers got hurt, the whole thing just disintegrated around him. And it reached the point where like, it's not a workable situation. Like it reached the level where you're saying you're no longer getting meaningful information about what Daniel Jones is capable of. And the only thing I think you
Same point we were making, by the way, on our podcast, absolutely.
The only thing I think you did get out of it is when they didn't have him in there, it was worse, right?
You think?
So if nothing else, right, if nothing else, you are looking at these guys who, so Mike Glennon had one of the most, like his statistical year last year was one of the worst things the NFL has ever seen. But Mike Glennon in the past has been a serviceable NFL backup. He's not a guy that has no business being attached to an NFL roster.
Right.
And the difference between like Mike Glennon out there and Daniel Jones out there was night and day. So the situation was so bad that I don't think you can learn about where Daniel Jones' upside is. But I do think it is important that like he still looked a hell of a lot better than the backups.
And I almost think health for him is the most important part of the equation, right? You can't have a quarterback missing 4 or 5 games every year. That's just not going to be tenable, especially when one of the things that make Daniel Jones a good quarterback is the fact that he can run. So that's a circle that has to be squared at some point.
Yeah, and it did feel like the coaches weren't necessarily helping him out in that regard. Like, it's one thing to say this guy has athletic skills that we should tap into and use as part of the offense because he's special. He can do things that it doesn't look like he should be able to, but they're devastating to a defense. It's another thing to be like, this guy is like just rolling back in from a neck problem or a concussion or whatever it was and put him out initially. Mm-hmm. Let's like barrel him up the middle into some linebackers on QB power. It's like, okay, there's a middle ground here, right? We can tap into the athleticism without like leading him into a second concussion in rapid succession. So I think there's a way that can be, used as part of the offense, but like let's maybe dial back. Like, as much as he's a really useful rushing quarterback, he isn't built like Josh Allen. He isn't built like Cam Newton. And, he can do some things, but you want to limit the number of times you're expecting that guy to throw himself into a linebacker up the middle.
All right, let's talk about how they're going to try to mesh this offense together. You guys know how these styles work. And Brian Dable comes from a very specific, Ron Earhart-style system in Buffalo, right? Mike Kafka comes in as the offensive coordinator. He's been West Coast his whole life, right? Played under Andy Reid, now with the Chiefs. How do you see those two systems kind of melding together? The one thing I see, I think both those systems value separators at wide receiver and speed guys more than size from what I can see. So how do you see them kind of bringing those two systems together for something that works for Daniel and the Giants' talent?
Well, that's the key point is I think both of those coaching trees have got a history and have done a really good job for an extended period of time at molding their system to the quarterback, to the specific guy that they have. Not necessarily, here's what we do, we're going to teach you how to run it, and that's what we're going to... Like, they will mold the offense to their specific quarterback. So the fact that they have Daniel Jones, and now you have these two guys coming from different systems, they're going to figure out what makes most sense for Daniel Jones. And, the Chiefs have always been running a ton of RPOs, which are still... They've evolved and they've changed a little bit over the years, but they are still kind of NFL cheat codes. They're still free plays, easier plays, plays with the easy button turned on where the quarterback's read is simpler and it's just taking advantage of the fact that the defense can't cover everything. I would imagine this offense will feature a decent number of those. I think they'll probably still tap into Daniel Jones' athleticism, but like we said, maybe not so much running right up the gut on QB power or whatever, but just using him as an extra threat that'll freeze a defender and give you some space to work in the passing game. And then, what the overall structure of the passing game itself looks like and the sort of play designs and those kinds of things, I think is a little bit more up in the air, and they'll see how that evolves as they go.
How about Wing Martindale? Do you need, in your opinion, really good edge players in the Wink Martindale system?
No,
or is the volume of rushers more important than necessarily the quality of the guys to win one-on-one?
I think that system has a history of showing that actually you can kind of scheme up pressure, and you don't need to get an elite pass rusher, because if you blitz in the right ways, you're going to free that guy up with one-on-one opportunities, and often one-on-one, not just against a left tackle, but against a running back
or
and
tight
a tight
end,
end, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how. So we were saying that we sort of suggested that maybe Baltimore could actually game the system and just start drafting these guys, turn them into 10-sack players by virtue of the fact they play in this system that frees them up all the time, and then let them walk in free agency, flip them for compensatory draft picks.
It's what they did with Judon, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
and just keep repeating that system. And we were saying that when they had some players coming up for free agency, and we thought, just let them walk, let them repeat the process, rinse and repeat, and they ended up actually throwing some money down and keeping these guys. But I think that's true. Like you don't need an elite edge rusher. It helps, right? It's never a bad thing. It's one of those things where the adage of you can never have too many pass rushers, true. You can never have too many elite pass rushers, also true. If you can win with 4 guys without having to do anything else, that is always the most useful thing for a defense. But if you can't do that, if you don't have those guys, or if you only have one of those guys, there's a bunch of different ways to skin the cat from there. And I think this is one of them, which is we can blitz if we trust our secondary, if we trust the guys in the back end, we can manufacture pressure up front without having an elite pass rusher.
All right, 2 more for you. Saquon Barkley, how do you think the Giants handle him? Because I feel like if you try to move on from him now, it's certainly a sell low scenario, right, where
Sure.
you're not going to get back where the value is. But at the same time, his contract's up after the year. So if you get to next year and he plays really well, he's a free agent. So how does that help you?
Yeah.
Franchise and trade with the running back, does that really work? Compensatory pick if you lose him. How do you think they should best address Saquon and deal with him heading into the final year of his deal?
It's tough because, like, any scenario is bad, right? There's no
not
good
great.
way of progressing from this. Like, the original sin was the drafting of Saquon Barkley at the top of the draft, taking a running back that high, not grabbing a quarterback. Okay, the way the quarterbacks have panned out afterwards, you can make the argument that, hey, it would have been wrong anyway.
Quentin Nelson would have been bad, though.
Sure, but like Sam Darnold was the guy, right, that everybody was
Absolutely.
saying,
Correct.
you should have taken Darnold, you shouldn't have taken Saquon.
And by the way, I love Darnold too, so I would have
Right.
been in that mix.
But
absolutely.
hindsight being 2020, now you're looking back and you're like, well, that wouldn't have been any better, but at least you would have taken the shot on the quarterback.
Josh Allen would have been nice, but
Yes. So you're looking at this and you're saying there's no good here. The question is, like, what's the least damaging way of getting away from this? And I think ultimately it's probably you already made the mistake. You have the good player.
use him, right?
Yeah, you're probably not getting a ton back from him in a trade, so play him. If he plays fantastically, let him walk. Don't give him the second contract. Get the compensatory draft pick and use that on a running back, which is where you're supposed to be taking running backs in the first place now, right? Just to learn from it, right? And he can still be a really useful part of your offense. He's an incredibly talented player, and if the offensive line does get better, if Daniel Jones starts playing better, his job gets easier. So there's a world where that offense takes the step forward that I've been talking about, and Saquon Barkley is a really important part of that, but then you let him walk, right? Then you learn from where the value and how those pieces interplay, and you accept that running back is not the place you want to allocate the resource.
I think you trust Dable and Kafka to use him the right way, too. All right, final question. We're going to have your colleague Austin Gallen tomorrow to do deep dive into the draft. Based on what you've looked at, what the Giants' needs are, they pick at 5 and 7. Great spots to be. Maybe not the best draft to be picking at 5 and 7, but that's where they are. What are your thoughts just in terms of what directions they could go? What players should fans be keeping an eye on?
I think there's going to be an offensive lineman there for them. Take your pick of position.
You guys have Charles Cross as your number one guy, or
Yeah.
is it Equanu? You guys
Yeah,
have Cross,
but I think
right?
it's very close. Like
Okay.
those 3 guys, I forget our draft board order, but I think it's like 3, 4, 5, or 4, 5, 6.
Is it that tight?
They're
Okay.
all on the line, right, one after the other. So whichever offensive lineman you like, there's probably going to be one of those tackles available there. I also think a guy like Tyler Linderbaum is really intriguing, right? The Quentin Nelson thing, right? You go back a few years ago, and it's like you can't take a guard at number 6. Nelson, not only did they take him at 6, he's been the most valuable offensive lineman, not guard, lineman, period. Any
More
position.
than tackles even, really,
right,
huh?
over
Wow.
his
Okay.
period of time in the NFL. So he essentially was so good that he changes the position value thing, right? The idea of you can't take a guard that high because it's never worth it. It was worth it with Quentin Nelson, even over tackles. Now, Linderbaum's a center. It's a different thing, but it's the same idea. Like, is he good enough at that position where you say the ceiling that we take a center? You don't take a center higher than the mid of the first round, right?
Last 25 years, you have not had one center go in the top 10.
And you've had some great centers, right? Nick Mangold, you know, really high-level prospects. But I'm just saying, Linderbaum is potentially in that realm of he's so good. Maybe you take him with that second first-round pick, or maybe you can trade back and get him at the in the middle of the first round. But if you could come out of this draft, maybe you also pounce on one of Thibodeau, or if one of those guys starts to slide, I've no problem with that whatsoever. Also, wouldn't hate a corner or whatever. But
Sauce, Stingley, whatever.
Yeah, but if you came out of that first round with 2 offensive linemen, I don't think it would be a bad thing whatsoever. Particularly if you've already hammered, those mid-level free agents, and you brought in a couple of those guys.
And then you had your 5 guys.
All of a sudden, you've thrown 4 or 5 guys at this thing, and even if 1 or 2 of them doesn't hit, you're still in a much better position.
Sam, good to see you, my man.
Good to see you.
Tell the folks where they can find all your stuff on Pro Football Focus, the podcast, all that stuff.
Yeah, PFF.com is obviously where all the stuff is. You can find our podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, the PFF NFL podcast. And if you subscribe to PFF, use the promo code NFLPod, you get 25% off. Do
you want to plug your charity too, so you can
keep
whipping Steve?
My pin tweet at PFF_Sam. We're dueling charity drives. So mine is raising money for a group called Sunshine Kids that tries to make life better for kids with cancer. It gives them like fun activities so they can feel like kids again. And if I raise the most money, I have to recreate a Jackson Mahomes TikTok dance. So I'm not looking forward to that, but I would like to win still.
Yes, I think that'd be a good idea. Sam, good seeing you, man. We'll
You
talk
too.
to you soon. Sam Monson for Pro Football Focus. We'll wrap up the show with Madeline Burke right after this on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by AWS.
Welcome to the Eli Manning Show.
Cool. You need anything? Reach out. I'm here for you, all right, man? Thanks. Appreciate it, Sam. You too, man.
Don't worry. What are you doing here? Yeah! Stomp him out! The cast from Entourage is here. This is a real show.
You know what small people do? Win. How about that?
I'll park it for you.
Keep it close. I got Eli down.
Omaha!
What a clever title.
This is a program that's been in existence for a number of years. And it's really exciting to see what these kids have overcome and how they inspire the people around them.
On behalf of Hospital for Special Surgery, USA Football, and the New York Football Giants,
I'm here to present you the Heart of the Giant Award. Congrats, man.
We wrap up Wednesday's coverage of the Combine on Big Blue Kickoff Live right here, brought to you by AWS, proud sponsor of the New York Football Giants. We're joined by our partner here at the New York Football Giants. That's Madeline Burke. Madeline, how are you?
Doing great. I feel like we're finally settled in after that Monday St. Elmo dinner. I feel like I'm finally back to like functioning.
I still was feeling it this morning, to be honest with you.
Quite the food coma, but worth it.
All right, so tell the folks what you're going to be doing here this week and what they can kind of stay tuned for.
Yeah, so this week I'm going to be doing a lot of the social, digital content. We've got a lot of stuff to take in this week. Of course, today we heard from some of the quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends. I'm sure you've gone through it a little bit as well. But I think, one of the things that stood out to me today was, a lot has been said about how this isn't a great quarterback class. Carson Strong was talking about, hey, I look around and I think these guys are talented. Everyone's got an arm. He repeatedly praised Malik Willis's arm and athleticism. But I think it was also really interesting how he said that, because there's no number 1 overall pick like a Trevor Lawrence or an Andrew Luck, people are saying, oh, this class is trash. But there's still some talent, even though you could find it deeper. And there was just like some interesting stories, some interesting personalities. Getting to know these guys is always one of the fun parts of the Combine. You hear them talk, answer questions. Some of the guys that you're surprised by that grew up Giants fans. And so that's always fun.
And then tomorrow on BBK, you're going to have Colleen Wolfe and Cynthia Freeland on the Giants Huddle.
Absolutely. My gals. We're going to have some of the gal pals on, Colleen Wolfe, Cynthia Freeland, some very impressive women who are working over at NFL Network, of course. I'm sure everyone listening is very familiar with their work. And it's going to be great. Yeah.
Stay tuned to the Giants social media stuff, too. Madeline's all over it. She'll be on it
Oh,
all
yeah.
week.
We're giving you behind-the-scenes stuff on Giants Snapchat. We're going to give you We have a Q&A with Brian Dable. I thought it was very
Yes.
interesting. I asked him what his favorite movie was, and he said Breakfast Club.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's a great one. That's a great choice. I think we were kind of taking guesses of what his favorite movie would be, but that was a pretty strong one.
Madeline, good stuff.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you this week and having you on the show later on in the week, too.
I'll be here.
For Madeline Burke, I'm John Schmelk. Thanks again for being with us on this episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by AWS, proud sponsor of the New York Football Giants. We'll be back with 2 more shows this week, Thursday and Friday at 12 o'clock. And make sure you tune in live. Of course, the archives will all be posted up on the Giants mobile app and at giants.com/podcast and your favorite podcast platforms. And stay tuned later today. Giants Huddle podcast will be up. We'll have Jordan Reed from ESPN. We'll see you then, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow from the Combine.